that so small thing, like grandma being the first cousin to your grandmother and Joe Kelly being the first cousin to your grandfather?
I'd like to welcome you all to this special event. We have author Marjorie Bronson McMullen Parks here with us today to tell us a little bit of intriguing history about the settlement of the area, not just her family, but the adventure that was life then, war and travel through difficult areas. So she has a lot of interesting things to share with us today, I'm sure. So without further ado, Marjorie, you have the floor.
Well, I'm just off the hook. I didn't bring any notes at all. I know there's a couple of my cousins here. I was born at Brunson's Bridges. Does anybody know where Brunson's Bridges are? And my name is, you pay attention to this, Brian.
I'm listening.
B-R-O-W-N-S-O-N. His is B-R-O-N-S-O-N. But we're all relation. I have a brother who spells his name without the W. However, I raised 3 children, mostly in Madoc. My husband worked for Madoc Engineering for 41 years. And we lived in Madoc and Frankfurt. But we never came back to Madoc, which I'm sorry about because I love Madoc. I love standing on the, I know there's none of you here that remember Ben Lee, but he was an uncle. Oh yeah, you were.
The candy man?
He used to stand on the corner with his maple buds.
Yeah, always candy.
Anyway, and about my book, a few years ago, maybe 25 years ago, I decided we needed a Brunson history. Put all the family together. So I collected, I went to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. I have a first cousin that lived there, and gleaned quite a bit of history. In Hartford, Connecticut, they were there, and they were all Americans until the Revolution, and then they were kicked out, as you know, and they came to Fredericton Beach. I'm not going to give my book away, but they did do all of those things, and ended up in Quebec. I have a tombstone in Local, Quebec, that has my great, I don't know how many greats, I think it's 3, grandmother's tombstone written on it. And so that's where their bases were. And then they eventually, he arrived, the book ends when he arrived in Hastings County. Not when he arrived, but a few years later. That's about all I can tell you about the book without giving it away. I think you'll truly enjoy it, and as I did. But anyway, so I wrote this history, and then when I got it just about finished, I thought, gee, you know, this might make a nice book. So I was encouraged by a neighbor to pick up where I left off and started writing a book. And I call it a novel. It's about 80% the truth. But of course, I don't remember all. I remember none of the bad things. But I remember all the things, the good things. And it ends in the mid-1900s. So it ends before any of you in this room, including me, was born. But you will truly enjoy it. You will truly enjoy the hardships they went through, I think. And that's about all I have to say. except I would take any questions from anybody. If you'd like to ask me anything, about anything.
Do you know where number 3, the Brunson's called the property on Storms Road, number 3? Well, Storms Road, Spry Road.
Spry, oh, of course. I went to school in the Spry School.
You know where number 3 is?
No, not
It
exactly.
was the 3rd lot in from Brunson's Rapids Road.
Oh,
That's where I live.
oh,
I
really?
live on the north end of the Brunson Park.
Did you buy that from Francis's?
From who?
Francis?
That is.
I am Francis. I didn't get my camera.
So you're Vera's, your relation to Vera?
Yeah,
That's my mother.
I'm her daughter.
Oh, you're Vera's daughter?
That's his son, her son.
For heaven's sake, small world, eh? Yeah. Vera and, Vera's sister, Mary, your aunt, had an awful crush on my brother. And he had one on her too, so.
They're both still alive.
Not that, oh yeah, my brother isn't. No.
Yeah.
Gordon,
But Vera and Mary are both still alive.
I know, they're just 2 doors from me.
Oh,
They live at Quinty Gardens.
no, not anymore.
Oh,
Mom's in Tweed and Aunt Mary's gone back to Bancroft.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Is your Uncle Ted still in Quinny Gardens?
No, he's in Napanee.
For heaven's sakes.
But the Foley's, that was the Foley settlement.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the middle road, and the ladies road, and, I don't know, Old Marmer Road,
Did you know a Charlotte Brunson?
Charlotte. No?
Marjorie, that would be Charlotte Leahy.
No,
Is that the one you mean?
no, she was David, my husband's grandmother,
What?
great grandmother, Charlotte Brunson. Married Nicholas Fleming.
Oh,
Yes, he's.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody seems to know who her parents were.
No, oh, don't,
No.
but I can look it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I would like if you could.
Yeah.
The original Bronsons that came up, were they spelled with a B-R-O-W?
O-W-N-S.
Okay, and their nationality would have been Scottish,
They came up,
British? Okay,
that's where the book starts. in Britain.
okay, coming over from Britain. Uh-huh. And who married into the family then?
Well, my mother was a
Lewis
leader,
Sandal.
which is connection with these girls here.
Yeah, it's in Marjorie's, the other book that I have at home. Yeah, it's in the,
Yeah, my dad married a lead. That one I told you used to stand on the corner, he was a lead.
Men? That was before my.
yes, she did like a book.
Yeah.
Or this book.
And I don't know,
The
there,
first book, she went
but
from
that follows
right
the,
up to the present day.
it follows them right through,
Of one brother out of 10.
through the wars, my book does, right through to, like I said, mid-1900s. When the,
Okay, so then the book would begin
in
in the war.
1636.
Oh, 1630s.
Yes, that's when they came over to Britain.
That goes back quite a ways.
Before that.
So you were able to research Wendy? Wendy? Do we have access to go back to the immigration period at the library that Marjorie?
In Ancestry, you probably can.
Because Marjorie, you went though to the United States.
I went to the United States to Library of Congress. They have mountains of information.
Because my family came from down there too. The Shermans came up from
Oh, yeah.
New
So
York.
you'd be amazed at how much information. Now, I was rather lucky because my cousin knew her. She passed away 6 months ago, but she knew her way around. And so she took me to, help me research that. And then Hartford, Connecticut is where they came to farm when they first came from Britain. But I don't want to dwell on the fact of it being Brunson, because it could be any family. There were hundreds of families that came over, and they went through the same. So, you know, I don't want to dwell on it being Brunson, because people might say, well, you know, oh, it's just something she's written up about her family. It's far from that. The book is the fact that it's Brunson, and I happen to have been a Brunson, is not what the book is about.
It's about the history of
Yes,
settlement.
yes.
Could I ask you, without you're giving away too much of the book, could I ask you, before there was a bridge at Roxon's Rapids, was it forded? Was it a road that people forded?
It probably was forded. It probably was. I should know that, but I don't sure.
Do you have a sense of the place of Roxon's Rapids? Do you have a sense of the place in the very early time when the Roxon's perhaps first arrived there?
I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm just trying to imagine the place, what Roxon's Rapids was like, you know, the very
Yes.
early days.
Well, my dad has told us quite a bit about it. I know that when he was a little boy, my dad would be, this really makes me sound ancient, but my dad would be, I think, about 128 if he was living, because I'm near the end of the family, they had 9. But he used to say that Grandpa used to take the horses and a load of, what's the ashes?
Potash.
Potash. They made potash. And they used to take it to Belleville to sell. And they'd bring their lunch because they'd have to stop along the way. And you know, it would be dark before they'd ever get back home with the wagon and the load of potash. And I've heard that story a lot of times. Yeah.
Did the Brunsons live there before Uncle Bruce, before your dad?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad's older brother lived there, and they had a baby. They lived there with the grandparents. And they had a baby, and this might be interesting, or might not be, but they had a baby, and they were going to live there. And then I had another uncle who, and I'm not even going to say his name, but he was a bit of a drunk.
Oh, no, I can't believe that.
Donna, it wasn't John. It wasn't John.
He used to come home from the logging camp, and he would make a mess all over the floor, and she said, I can't live like this. So they picked up and went to Wisconsin, and we started a Brunson clan there. So I have the one that was in Washington D.C. that went to the Library of Congress with me as a daughter of that line of the Brunsons. Yes, yes. So, anybody else?
Are those families still in Wisconsin?
Yes.
Yes.
They're all over the states. They grow like mushrooms.
How long did it take you to write the book?
Well, altogether 20 years, but it actually took me probably a year when I first started it, and then another 7 years when I picked it back up again. So, and people have talked to her saying, when are you going to start your second book? I said, are you out of your mind? I could never do that. I'm too old for this one. I'm usually not as crippled as this, but I've had the flu, and I have a little bad heart, and it's attacked my heart a bit. Otherwise, I don't run, but I am over 25.
I wouldn't want to just read just a small excerpt to give us a little taste. You wouldn't want to read just a small excerpt to give us a little taste of your writing, would you?
You don't want this?
Yeah, just read just a little.
Taking of Louisburg?
Sure.
The taking of Louisburg in 1744 did not mean peace. Now the Brunsons were in this, between the two great generations of England and France. For the final power struggle to gain control of America was yet to come. The English outnumbered the French 15-1. However, the French had control of the two chief rivers, the St. Lawrence and the Mississippi. Matters were looking so serious that a convention of northern colonies met in Albany in 1754 to decide what action should be taken. The Iroquois Indians, staunch friend of the British, sent some of their people to the convention and warned the colonists that if they did not take up arms, the French would drive every Englishman out of America. So at last, after all important points had passed into the hands of the French, the colonists finally opened up their eyes to the danger that threatened them. They finally awakened to the fact that unless they did not move to explore the rich land west of the Alleghenies, the heart of the country would be well lost to the bitter enemies, the French. To prevent such a disaster, a wealthy London merchant, along with certain rich Virginians, organized the Ohio Company to establish a colony of immigrants on the east bank of the Ohio River in the rich land of the Alleghenies. Okay?
Sure.
And that's how the book is. And it all incorporates the Brunsons in everything, the wars that they did. And it travels right through, yeah. So it's just not about Brunsons. It's about what happens to all of those people who struggled because they were Puritans. The groups that came over were Puritans, and they didn't agree with the Brunsons are still disagreeing with a lot of people.
Don't look at me. Leave me alone.
They didn't agree with the Church of England. They were Puritans, and so they felt that they were being shortchanged, and that's why they wanted to move to the new land of America. And every time I read it, I think of, that's why I'm here, is because the struggle of the people that did everything. It's impossible to even imagine how, like they built, put up some logs against a fence to stay out of the cold while they were building some place to live. There was nothing there. They just had to build from nothing. So if it hadn't been for them and the millions like them that came over, we would never have had our foot in the door at all. So I guess we have to thank them for that. Anything else?
Was it a larger settlement at that time than it is now? Was there not more families there?
Oh, I would imagine so,
Yeah.
because they all settled within, they didn't have a great mode of transportation, so they didn't go very far. But they were granted, when it comes down to the last one, Brunson, he was in the War of 1812, and he was granted land in Hastings County. That's how we really come to be in Hastings County. He was granted land in Hastings County, and
Whereabouts was that? Where was that? Right out at the Brunson?
yes,
Register?
yes. But it took them, I don't know whether it was 15 or 12 years to get that land. after them being granted it. They lived in Kingston, they lived in the eastern townships of Quebec, Lacole, and they were still applying for the land. And the babies were growing, you know, they had lots of babies. So it was a pretty hardship for them. But they, yeah. Anything else?
Marjorie? Not to be prejudiced, I enjoyed your book 100%. I just enjoyed every word of it. But something I didn't realize until I read your book was the United Empire Loyalists. Like, I thought they packed up and moved to Canada on their own, but they were actually kicked out. They lost their farms, they lost their businesses and everything. And like, there's so many families like the Empys and the Bronsons and that were United Empire Loyalists right in Madoc. But I didn't realize that they were kicked out of the States and said, you know, because they supported the Crown in the fight. And I thought they just packed up and left on their own, but they didn't.
No.
They lost their land and lost everything they had worked for almost 200 years.
I often wonder, Brian, when you're saying that, I've sold a lot of books, a lot of my books in the United States. Of course, we have a lot of relatives there, but it's not relatives. I've sold it to, actually, I have to tell you this little funny story. I have a best friend in Atlanta, Georgia, and I went to call her one day, and I got the wrong number. And this guy said to me, oh, I think you have the wrong number. He said, and I said, well, I was calling my cousin in Atlanta, Georgia. And he said, well, I live in Atlanta, but you got the wrong number. But he said, what about this book? And he went on, and he said, give me the number, I want a book. So you would have been in danger if you'd have come in my store, because I would have sold you a dress. I should have brought some notes, but I'd rather do it off the cuff.
Marjorie, could you tell us a little anecdote that would give us a little bit of a feel for what it was like for them to make that journey, both the hardships and the humor I'm sure that the family possessed that would help them get through those hardships? Do you have anything you could share with us?
About them arriving and, yes, they it's so long ago now since I read the book that I read it about 15 times. They were really in hardship. They didn't like the. I remember them especially when they trekked through the woods. They arrived in Boston, and when they trekked through the woods from Boston to Connecticut, they were had little children they'd carry on their shoulders, and older grandmas and grandpas that they'd have to help across rivers. And they'd have to ford the rivers. And so by the time they got to where they were going, they were so bit up with, it was mosquito time, they were so bit up with mosquitoes, and they could hardly distinguish their faces. It was very hardship. Mothers nursing babies, and I just can't even imagine how it must have been like for them. They must have had very strong characters. Not only the Brunsons, but all of those people that made that trek. And on the boat over, I'm giving away my book again, but on the way over they had to take blankets and hang around where their family was to give themselves a little privacy. And they never came aboard when there'd be a big storm. They'd be underneath for days. They couldn't come up above at all because they'd be swept into the sea. So it was pretty hard. It was mind-boggling. I can't imagine if it hadn't been for some of my relatives, especially the one in Washington, going with me, I don't think I could have been steered into the right places to get this information. Of course, that's a few years ago. Things are different now. And that's, any more?
Well, from your experience now, can you streamline my search?
What's that?
Can you streamline my search? Where would I go first to?
Where would
Yeah.
you, well, I would go first to the Library of Congress, or now you could probably do it from home.
That's right, that's what I'm just wondering, but yeah.
And
We
I
can't
get
get
it.
past 1840s.
18, oh, that's modern.
We just seem to lose track of, my grandfather was born in
Really?
1852.
Oh, well, you should be able to do that in Ottawa.
But my son, well, they came up too during the war, you know, United Empire Loyalists, and my son and my nephew haven't been able to get past that.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, I don't know whether we were criminals or what.
Well, that's, like I said, I just happen to be so lucky to have my first cousin, that was able to steer me in the right places. And unfortunately, she's not here anymore, but,
Okay, Library of Congress, I guess that would be it.
yeah. And then when I went to the Connecticut, the state library in Connecticut, I had, I've lost my train of thought. When I went there, I had a guy who was so friendly, and he would call, after I came home, I would call him, and he'd say, oh, I'll go and look that up for you. And, you know, that's how I got a lot of information in Connecticut, was through him. So if you could befriend someone.
Yeah, to be friends.
It can help a lot. It's a lot of fun writing a book, a lot of fun. It's just you're tracing a history, because there's so many things that you don't expect that happen, you know, that did happen. And the book ends with my great-great-grandfather. And he had such hardships trying to find some place to live that was owing to him, because he fought in the War of 1812, and he was granted this land. But he didn't get it for, I don't know whether it was 15 or 20 years or 10. It was a long time anyway. It was in the book how long it was. And he didn't get any land, and his children were all being raised. That man that I'm telling you about, he was the first teacher in Rawdon Township. Yeah.
His name?
Probably only had about grade 2.
His name? What was his first name?
His first name was Martin Brunson. Not John Martin. My grandfather was John Martin, and his father was Martin.
If there are no more questions for Marjorie, we'll make it a little bit more informal at this point. Marjorie, if you want anybody to come up and sign the book, and if anybody would like to make a purchase, we'll have you come up, and then we can work out to keep some in the library too, if they're not all gone today.
He said it, just information.